Hello, viewers. I'm going to just talk off the top of my head for a few minutes here about the antinatalist argument. Uh, if you're not familiar completely with it, David Benatar wrote a book concerning the idea that living is not actually as good as we think it is, and that even though we can make justification style arguments for being alive, probably the best thing to do would be to not have any more children, to not bring any more sentient beings into the world. And that Benatar's position here is that because of the asymmetry between the joys of life and the sufferings, the potential sufferings of life, that it is actually better not to be here. Now, this violates a lot of our intuitions because we're already alive, we're already here, we're concerned with our health and our well-being and the well-being of others. That's a primary sort of a neurological movement within a human being, is to feel connected and concerned. That gives us meaning and value, and makes our lives better rather than worse. So I think that often gets confused with Benatar's argument that he's not suggesting that we should kill ourselves, that we should try to end what's happening now. What he's suggesting is that in the future, because of the sum total of human suffering compared to the sum total of joy in human life, or any sentient life, is what Benatar is arguing, is that it would be better not to have any children in the future, not to bring more children into the world, more sentient beings, not just human beings, but all sentient beings in the world. This seems like a very, very strange argument. And I'm not siding with Benatar necessarily, but I'm just trying to understand and get inside his argument a little bit more. What I've seen, because I was looking around on the internet here, on YouTube, and trying to figure out if anybody had a good understanding of his argument in a concise way, and there just wasn't anything there. There was a lot of talk about how bad his ideas are, and a lot of emotional justification and emotionally based arguments. So, of course, I can't subtract emotion from my argument. I have an investment, like any human being does, in being alive and in having my ideas be correct. So, I've got my vested interest there, but I want to try to look at Benatar's argument in a little bit more detail and try to slog through some of the difficulties that I think people are experiencing when they listen to what he has to say. So again, imagine you were working in a job, or maybe you are working in a job that is really unfulfilling. There are moments of joy in the job, but in general, you really wish you didn't have to be there anymore. And someone comes up to you who's a nice person, and you enjoy their company, and they say, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting a job where you're working. What do you think?" So if you said to them, "Well, sure, you should work where I'm working," thinking to yourself, "Well, that'll make my day a little bit nicer because I'll have this nice person around." But actually, what you're doing is you're inviting them into a situation where you're not having a good time, and you're assuming they probably won't have a good time either, and yet you're encouraging them to come and work at this place. So that would be, in my view, that would be immoral. The real thing to say that's honest would be to say, listen, this is a terrible place to work. There are moments of joy, but you're probably going to have moments of joy if you're in another job, or if you didn't work at all, you might be happier. But working here, there's more suffering, way more boredom and discontent than there is joy. So no, I don't think you should work here. So of course, this is my metaphor for life. And again, I'm not siding with Benatar. I'm not saying I think that he's necessarily correct here. I'm just trying to explore his argument. So in this case, again, using the metaphor of a bad job, you wish you didn't have to be there. You wish maybe you didn't have to work at all. Now, it's not a perfect metaphor because, of course, work is just part of your life, and you have another life aside from your work. But if we could imagine that you just worked 24 hours a day at a job you really didn't enjoy, many people are in a situation where they're not enjoying their lives, and they're just trying to get through it or pay for it by doing things they don't really like to do so that they can live yet another day and then get a little bit older. And we can infuse our lives with hope for the future that things will get better. And for some people, maybe things do get a little bit better, but for a lot of people, they don't get better. They just stay the same, or they get worse. And in fact, for many of us, as we get older, we become, our cognitive capabilities diminish, our sexual drives diminish, our ability to change our lives for the better diminishes, and things become more and more hopeless. So through an arc of a life, you might start out with a lot of hope and a lot of energy, and as you go towards the end of your life, you have less and less of that, and eventually, you're going to die anyway. We're all going to die. Now, you could ask yourself, and again, if you're a theist, if you believe in God, I'm not going to touch on that right now. I'm just going to talk about a more atheistic or a neutral way of looking at life. If you go through an arc of a life and you die at the end of your life, do you think to yourself now, well, I really hope I come back and do it all again? It might be better, it might be worse, but think this through. The life you've had this experience, you've been here to experience it, however it worked out for you. Do you want to come back and roll the dice to see whether or not, you have a better or a worse life? Consider all the potential. If you could come back, you might come back in a very poor country. You might come back with serious physical disabilities. You might come back very rich, but that's not a very good chance because there's very few rich people. The ratio is very skewed there. So the chances are you're going to come back to a life that will be as difficult and probably more difficult than the one you're having. Now, we tend to think that we're sort of we're resting in peace after our death. We're sort of lying there, waiting for something to happen. And this isn't the case, of course. It's just an intuition that we have because we're used to the idea of sleeping and waking back up. But when you're dead, as far as we know, that's it. The body dissolves, the cognitive processes dissolve, the pattern that you are, your memories, your thoughts, your preferences, all dissolve. And, the body literally dissolves back into the elements of the earth. So there's nothing there. There's nobody there to wish they would come back. Imagine a field that you're not in right now, a beautiful field by a mountain stream. And that's going to be the experience of you not being on the earth. You're not going to be sitting somewhere in a corner waiting to jump back out into nature. You are nature. You're that which is already there, minus your particular physicality at the moment. So my point here is nobody's going to miss anything. So this is what Benatar, I think, hasn't been able to articulate maybe clearly enough, is a sort of Buddhist idea of an extinction, that the body and the mind are just gone when you're dead, and there's nothing there to be worried about not coming back. Now, another metaphor that he uses, I think Sam Harris used as well, if you look out into the cosmos, and you look out into areas of the universe where there's no life at all, as we know, there's just rocks. You could say rocks might be sentient in some way, but at a very low level. So things are floating around. There's no eyes watching what's going on. There's no consciousness. There's no memories. We don't feel that that's a tragedy. We don't look at that and go, oh, there should be more human beings. If only there was a bunch of stockbrokers on that planet, things would be so much better. And nobody thinks that, right? And if you think about the avariciousness of human beings, and we have other wonderful qualities, but we do, through evolutionary biology, have a tendency to want to grasp that which is going to sustain us at the expense of our environment. And all you need to do is look at planet Earth and the way all of us behave. Even against some of our more noble intuitions, we tend to behave in ways that can be very detrimental to environment. So my argument here would be, human beings at this place in history where we're ready to evolve maybe to even another species or even into an artificial intelligence that would be able to explore the universe, but that intelligence might be based on some of our own avariciousness. If that was to happen, and human beings with all the problems that we have could launch out into the universe and start inhabiting other parts of the universe, is that a good thing? Now, I'm not so sure it is. If you look at the way we've been stewards of our own planet, our track record really isn't very good. You can imagine if you were a hotel manager and you had a band in a rock band that just trashed the hotel room and then left, and they said, hey, we're going to go on tour now. We're going to be staying in a bunch of other hotels. Could you recommend some other hotels for us? You would not be recommending the other hoteliers that you wouldn't be suggesting they go to your friends' places and stay there, because these are bad tenants, right? You'd say to them, listen, you guys got to clean your act up first before I would ever suggest that you stay in anybody else's hotel. And I think that is the situation with human beings as well, is that we we do need to clean our act up in order to be morally able, and for it to be a good thing for us to move off planet Earth into other areas. You could look at imperialism in the same way. European imperialism has been very detrimental. There's been some good parts of it too. That's a very contentious argument. But we certainly haven't had a perfect track record. So all of those arguments sort of against the expansion of human beings, Homo sapiens, and then Benatar's argument goes all the way into any sentient life. And I'm not sure I follow him there, but I think I might agree with him that the intuition that we have that human life is just inherently valuable, in that there should be more and more and more of it. It doesn't matter how many there are. There's 7 billion of us now, 20 billion, 100 billion, 200 billion. It doesn't matter. We just need more. I think that's a very flawed way of thinking. So pulling back and maybe, not expanding as quickly until we become more morally competent to do so would be more my intuition. The idea of human life and sentient life going into extinction so it doesn't come back at all, I'm not sure I follow Benatar there, but I do appreciate his argument, because I think it sheds light. It starts to bring up some very interesting points about humanity and the value of humanity. So thanks for listening, guys, and I'll end the stream now. Those are my thoughts on antinatalism.